Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Decode with Shekhar. In the last video, we discussed about sending bulk emails via Google Sheets. If you haven't watched that video, you can find the link on the top right and in the description box below. Today, we will continue on the same by adding a few more functionalities such as sending email as a CC, adding attachments, along with few other functionalities. So let's get started. So let us see how can we CC some people in the emails. For that, we had already created 3 rows for each of the email that needs to be sent. I'll add another column of CC and I'll write some sample emails and I'll copy that to all the 3 rows. You can change the emails as required. Now that I have added the column, I'll go back to the code which we wrote last time to send out the emails. Now, along with the message, subject and email address variable, we'll also write the value of the CC variable. For that, I'll write the variable name as CC, copy and paste, and the variable is in the column 5. Now the CC variable has the value. The next thing what we'll do is we'll go to the mail app.send email and after 2 we will write the CC variable. Now let's save it and run the function. So the execution has been completed. And if I go back to my mailbox, you'll see I've got 3 new emails. And if I open any of them, you can see there's a CC over here as well. Next, let us talk about attaching a file within the email. We will see how to attach a PDF and an HTML within the email. Let's start with a PDF. For that, what I'll do is I'll go to the column F and write a column as file ID. So typically Google assigns an ID to every file that is present in the Google Drive. Let us take an example of how to find the ID. For that, I've just copied the URL for this particular file, and if I want to find the ID, then you have to find this D, and after D there's this ID over here. So for that, I'll just copy this particular part, and that is the file ID. So I'll paste that file ID. In case you want to send different files, you can add different file IDs within these cells. Now that I have the file ID for each of the email, I'll go back to the code and I'll define a variable which is file. Now after defining the file variable, I'll define another variable which is the file ID, and that will basically be sheet.getRange, and the range would be in the column 6 for the ith row and the value. And now to get the file, we'll define the file variable as file equal to drive app interface dot get file by ID, and the ID is file ID variable which we have just defined. Now that we have our attachment within the file variable, we'll go to the mail app.send email function. We'll add attachments, open the square bracket and say file dot get as, and we'll say mime type dot PDF. So this will basically fetch the attachment as a PDF. Now let us save the function and try running it, and execution completed. Now if I go back to my mailbox, you will see I've got 3 new emails, and each of these emails has an attachment. If I click on any of the email, you can see you have the CC value as well as the attachment, and if you see, the attachment is exactly the same as the file which we are just working on. Now, let us say that I also want to attach the HTML content that we were sending within the message as an attachment in the email as well. So for that, what I can do is I can define a blob variable. So I'll say variable blob, and now we'll fetch the value for this variable, which would be blob is equal to, we'll use the utilities interface and we'll say dot new blob, and now we have to write the data which we already have in our message variable, and the type of that data is basically text slash HTML, and finally we'll define the name, that is HTML content dot HTML, and close it. Now that we have the HTML content within our blob variable, we can go to the attachments, comma over here, and write blob. So this will basically attach the HTML as well, your email. Now if I save it and try to run, and execution completed. Now if I go back to my email and refresh, you'll see there are 3 new emails, and if I click on this one where I had actually put some links within the HTML content and open that, you can see the HTML being rendered over here. So now let us say I also want to add an image as an attachment which is being fetched from an external URL. For that I can define a variable image URL and then assign a value. For that I can say image URL is equal to a particular URL where the image is hosted, and then I'll define image blob which is basically equal to URL fetch app. So basically we'll fetch the image from the image URL and we'll get it as a blob and then set the name as image. Now I have the image in the image blob, and again we'll do the same thing. We'll go to the attachments and write the image blob over here. We'll save it and run. Execution is completed, and now if I go back to my mailbox, you'll see 3 new emails, and if I open any of them, you'll see the third attachment with the image attached. Now in case you want to have different images for different emails, you can follow the same methodology by adding another column and adding the hyperlink in that particular row, fetching that as a variable within the function like we have done for the other variables, and then sending it out as an attachment. In case you face any issues regarding this, please feel free to add any comments in the comment box below for help. So that's it for the sending email function. Another important aspect is that there are certain limitations in free Google accounts as to how many emails you can send every day in bulk. For that, we will define a function and we'll say check quota. This will tell us that how many emails I can still send in a particular day. So for that, I'll write a variable called email remaining, and within the mail app interface, there is a function called get remaining daily quota, and this will give me how many emails I can send in that particular day. And to see the value in the logger, I'll use logger interface and say logger.log, and I can say remaining quota, and then I'll write the variable which is email remaining and close it. Now I'll save this function, and to run this check quota function, I'll go over here and select check quota and then click on run. And you can see execution started, and then in the info it has logged remaining quota as 49. So we know that for today I can still send 49 emails via using this bulk email script. So that's it for today, and if you like this video, please do hit the like button below, and in case you have any questions, please feel free to add your questions to the description box below, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more exciting videos.